everyone, welcome to a Chandler's channel. I'm Tracy and I'm your host, and today's session is our topic of the week, and our topic of the week is, what's that? Body Wisdom Part 2. And did you just see my administrative assistant there? Or my, no, that's not fair, administrative assistant. What would we call you, Ollie? Come over here, come. No, not through there, come over here. Here, what could we call you? You're my production manager or something? Something like that, eh? Say hi to everybody. This is Ollie. He's a Woodle. Wheaten Terrier and Poodle, but he's got his summer shaving. So hopefully he doesn't bark during this session, okay? Did you go, puppy? Okay. Off you go. Off you go. Go lay down. Go lay down, puppy. Off you go. So this is our body's wisdom, actually, and dogs and pets and other animals probably pay attention a lot to their body and what their body is telling them. That's where they would get most of their messages from. So there you go. How convenient he came in. So so you were to wake up your body by paying it attention last week. So how did that go? Were you paying attention to that ache you had here, or that pain you had here, or, that nose that just kept dripping, or that eye that kept just going, or, that ear that was ringing, or, gosh, can't think of 500,000 other things that our bodies do. Sometimes, when the muscle goes to, just everything and anything, or that, pain you get here, it feels like somebody's going like that to you, So I don't know how that went. I hope it went well. If you haven't done it, do it. Say, hey body, I'm here, I'm listening, and see what happens. So, Body Wisdom Part 2, let's go get, I was going to say Ollie, let's go get Whitehawk and see what he has to say for Body Wisdom Part 2. Indeed, little one, he says. Body Wisdom Part 2. What can I say that I haven't said on the other day, he says. Well, I certainly can assure you that when you tell your body you are going to listen, it does wake up, he says. There's no doubt about that, my children. And as he is speaking, he and I are on horseback, like we often are, and we're riding. So as to for me to translate what it is that he's saying to me, this is the view I'm given, or picture I'm given. He goes, indeed, and I think it is a lovely view, is it not? He says, and what is around us today, Tracy? And I say, well, actually, we're kind of like in desert conditions. It's hot sun, and it's dirt that's around us. And when I look ahead of us, all I see is where the sun meets the dirt. If you were to look that far ahead, there's nothing on the horizon but that, the bright sun and the dirt meeting together. And he says, indeed, there's a good reason for that. He says, for indeed it is the start of a drought, he says, for many years, he says, to come. But that is not why we are here today, he says. We are here to speak of our bodies. He says, so in doing so, in awakening our body, he says, what did you feel? Did you feel pangs? Did you feel aches? He says, perhaps you sneezed a lot. He says, perhaps you sweated a lot. Perhaps it came in releases for you, he says. And I'm feeling like a release from our colon, so defecating, or even flatulence. And he goes, indeed, those are all parts of the body, n'est-ce pas, he says. Those are all ways the body speaks to us, he says. There is indeed probably 1,000,001, he says, ways in which the body does speak to us, but we don't we don't know it, he says. We don't pay attention to it. We just take it for granted, he says. For instance, he says, if your right big toe is aching, he says, well, you might notice it, he says, because it's aching and it's causing you pain. But why aren't you noticing it more, he says? Why aren't you saying, oh, hey, why is my big toe aching? Is something out of whack in my system? He says, these are all ways that our body gives us messages as to what is going on, not only inside the body, he says, but outside of the body as well. He says, you have heard this little one here, he says, speak of animosity or hostility that she feels in her belly, like when it comes from another, he's speaking. So I'll feel hostility or animosity in my belly if it's towards me and coming from another. He says, indeed, that is a message from outside of the body. He says, but what of all the messages from within inside the body? And so we all kind of, as he talks, we're kind of thinking about that. And then I'm seeing this vision that I had years ago in learning how to read my body, where it was Jesus that came to me, and so it's like he's sitting at the top of my shoulder, because I had this really bad chronic pain that I would get in this area right here in my shoulder. And when I went to him and I asked him, what it was, or to ask the body what it was, they showed me. And I didn't understand it at the time. It took me many years to understand it. But he showed me, like, say waterways, like lakes and rivers. And what the message was in the end is that they needed to be filled up. They had run dry. So over the years, what does that mean to me in the end? I was dehydrated. So that pain was that I needed more water in my body, and that's how it was coming to me. And so Whitehawk comes in and he says, yes, indeed, that is one of the many ways that when our body needs more water, he says, that it will come to us. One of numerous ways, he says. So, my children, listen to your body. You want to know, to understand how you can ask it, he says, what it is that it is saying to you, he says. Then I will share this with you. And he says, this is a big one, listen up, he says, because this in turn is as well very much like channeling, he says. For now you are going into your body and you are channeling indeed what it is saying to you. So he gets off his horse and he ties his horse up. And I'm sitting on a chair. I guess he's going to use me to show you. And I'm sitting on the chair and I'm relaxing and I'm closing my eyes. And, I'm sitting like this. And he says, yes, now close your eyes, everyone. Close your eyes. So everybody, is to close their eyes. And he says, now go to that ache. Go to that pain, he says. Go to the fatigue, he says, you feel. Go to the sweat that you broke out in, he says, at one point in time. Go to that itchy scalp, he says. Go to the buzzing in your ears, he says. Go to the sniffing of your nose, he says. Go to the itching of your nose. Go to the itching of your eyebrow. Go to wherever it is your body was giving you a message. So we go to that place. He says, are you there? I'm like, okay, yeah. He says, okay, go in. Just go in. Pretend you're like into that area, So we go in. And some of us have more trouble than others in trying to get that concept. He says, do not think about it, just simply do it. He says, another way you could think of it, he says, is to shrink oneself down into a very small person, he says, and then drop yourself into that area, he says. Now, you're in that area. You're in the fatigue. You're in the itchiness. For me, it'd be like my itchy nose right now. Go in there. He says, what do you see? It's okay if you see nothing. Perhaps you just see blackness, he says. Do you smell anything? And it's okay if you don't. Perhaps that is not how it comes to you. Do you hear anything? Do you feel anything? Perhaps you just hear a song, a lyric that plays in your head. Perhaps you're hearing your mother's words, he says. Pay attention, he says. Do not judge it. Do not discount it. Just do it. And so we are. Some of us takes a little longer than others. Some get it right away. So Whitehawk is giving us time. Any luck, anyone, he says? It's a nice feeling in there, isn't it? He says, to be in there, to be connected, he says, to our body, to our body's wisdom. For some, maybe it's not so nice for now. For perhaps the reading is painful, he says. For perhaps you have connected to an emotion of pain, of grief, of anger, of hatred, he says. Nonetheless, listen. He says, after all this is done, he says, I want you to take notes. I want you to jot down, he says, that which it is that you have received as guidance from your body. He says, we can always come back to this spot, to this place we have been as many times as we wish, he says. But for now, we will go, we will leave it. He says, so thank it for its messages to you. And now, come out of your body, he says. So if you were a small little thing, jump out of your body, he says, and then grow yourself bigger again. He says, if you just went into your body, he says, just come out of your body now, he says, and thank it. God bless, he says. And he says, so how was that, everyone? And some people shake their head like, wow, that was just groovy, you know? And other people are like, yeah, I got nothing. And some people are just sitting quietly, jotting down what it was they felt, heard, seen, smelled, anything, colors, pictures, artists' drawings. They're taking the notes down. But one thing's for sure, there's a hush, a calmness that has overcome us all. And he says, and that is where I will leave you, my children, for today, he says. Now you know how to tap into your body's wisdom. And the more you do it, he says, the more often you do it, he says, the easier it will become to understand. Oftentimes, though, he says, the interpretation is not for you to know immediately. Oftentimes, he says, it will come to you before it is time, he says, preparing you for what is up ahead of you. So worry not, fear not, he says, if you do not understand it. He says, Take the example of this one, he says, where it took her years to understand her body was simply trying to tell her she was dehydrated. He says, it comes differently for everyone. Everyone, he says, has different cycles, rhythms, he says. Just take it in, heat it, write it down, keep it, he says, in a journal, in a desk. And maybe one day you'll come back to it, he says, and it will completely make sense to you. You'll go, aha, the light will come on. So that is our session, he says, on our body's wisdom. God bless, he says. Thank you for joining us here today. And he blows you guys a kiss as well. I say, thank you, Whitehawk. And he says, thank you, Tracy. And he gets back up on his horse. Well, there you go. You guys are so lucky. Do you know how much money I paid to learn how to tap into my body's wisdom? And I have to say, it was very much worth every penny, every dollar, because it taught me so much to think that we could actually tap into our body's wisdom. And it was in and of itself its own intellect, which also came to me through Reiki, which also I paid money for too, to learn. So, you know what? Pay it forward. So if I had to pay, so it was an exchange of energy, right? I gave money, which is energy, to learn how to do this. What I ask for you to do is to pay this forward somehow, whether it be you just do something kind for someone with the intention that, you know what, I'm going to pay this forward. So you buy someone a coffee, or you go help someone clean their house, or you cut their grass, or you listen to that friend for that 100th millionth time for an hour. Something like that. Just have that intention that you're going to pay this forward. And that in itself gives this meaning. Do you know what I mean? Like, it makes it of value, it makes it worthy. For if I'm giving it to you free, it doesn't have the value and the meaning it should, and therefore then it loses its intensity or its power, and we don't want that. So there is another lesson for you. So thank you for being here. I do hope you use this. It is a very powerful tool in your life to help you into it. So our next session, how exciting, is the summer solstice. It's the topic of the week. I was going to do that today, but I had a chat with Whitehawk, and he said, you know, let's continue on with body's wisdom. So summer solstice, next Wednesday, Thursday, tune in, but I'll tell you what, the energy is already here. So pay attention to how you're feeling from, you know, this day forward to the beginning of the solstice, to the day of the solstice, even to after the solstice. And, you know, get a feel for what the summer solstice energy is. Good, bad, ugly. It is what it is. So that is all. I will see you when I see you the next time. Subscribe, it's free. Comment, like, be kind, keep it clean, share, and we'll see you next time. I'm Tracy for A Channeler's Channeler. God bless.